Hello, this is Rabbi Cat with Beit Tikkun, a synagogue without walls, to share some of my reflections on this week's Torah Parsha, the portion that we read for this week. And this week's Parsha is Sh'lach. So in this Parsha, Yod-Heh-Vav tells Moses to send men to Yaturu, the land of Canaan. And so it starts with Shalach Lecha, send lecha, for yourself or to yourself could be a way of reading it, and it's similar to lech lecha, the instructions that God gives Abraham: go out toward yourself, go out for yourself. And one way of looking at this is through a more Hasidic interpretation, a psycho-spiritual interpretation, where really what God is saying to Moses is, have the community send themselves out into themselves to explore their inner self, send out for themselves or to themselves, to engage in a psycho-spiritual journey of the landscape of their inner selves. Now, it does say send them to the land of Canaan, but you could look at it as a deep self-exploration into their own psycho-spiritual that's the word I'm looking for, into their own psycho-spiritual landscape and lens. Because we know that these are the people who came out of Egypt and they're still on a liberation journey. While they're physically free, they are still psychologically and spiritually constricted. They're still in what we'd like to call mo'adim katnut, a narrow consciousness, a small consciousness. They still have some of the Mitzrayim consciousness, the narrow or stuck consciousness within them. And so we could read this as saying that Yod-Heh-Vav is saying, I, Yod-Heh-Vav, am sending you to explore your landscape, to the land, your inner landscape, to the land that I'm giving to you. So what does the verb yaturu mean? So it's usually interpreted as to spy the land. So what does it mean to spy the land? God simply says yaturu, just to spy the land. Let's leave it at that interpretation for now. But then Moses adds all these instructions to the people that he's sending, to the men that he's sending. So he says to them, climb the mountain and see the land, and let us know, how is it? And how are the people that are dwelling in the land? And are the people strong or weak? Are they few or many? And what about the land? Is it good or is it bad? And what about the cities? Are they opened or fortified? Is the land fertile or is it lean? Are there trees on the land or not? So Moses already, in these kind of questions, provides a snapshot or framework of what they're supposed to be looking for when they enter the land and how they are to assess it. He's giving them, if you will, a coloring book, and they're supposed to fill it in. Whereas God simply said, Yaturu, the land. Go out and spy the land, look at the land, assess the land. He didn't, or she didn't, or it didn't, the divine did not tell Moses to say to the people, give me all these details. God just wants them to go have a look. But the meaning of Yaturu, as I said, is commonly translated as spy. But the Hasidim have a different understanding of that word, and they like to look at it as coming from the same root as the Torah, the word Torah. And so that they say that they're supposed to go Torah the land. It's very clever. They're supposed to maybe bring Torah, the Torah teachings, to the land, to the people of the land. And so perhaps it could be seen as a test of ex-slaves. Can they go to a land and teach that which they're being taught? Are they liberated enough to move beyond a worldview of domination and power over into a worldview of the consciousness of love and care and generosity? And one way we could assess that is whether or not they can explain that and teach that to others, or assess if others perhaps are living according to those values. So instead of thinking of it as spying the land, we could think of it as seeing if the land is infused with Torah teachings or if Torah can be brought to the people. So when Moses gives these narrow instructions, then the men go out and they come back, and all but Caleb and Joshua, tell a story of a land with giants and fortified cities, and that they see themselves as grasshoppers and say that the giants in the land see them as grasshoppers too. They're just so small. And again, what they're basing their assessment in is a worldview of domination and power over. That's how they're assessing it. They're not looking at it from a worldview of expansiveness or from a worldview of love or care. And so they're really stuck in a consciousness of fear. And I think that Moses's questions frame it in such a way that it was really hard for them to think any other way. But Joseph and Caleb were able to do that. So one thing I want to speak about in relation to this is today, how this plays out potentially in our consciousness in the world today. So in Israel, Palestine, Israel is a major military force in the Middle East. It has nuclear weapons. It has massive military power. It has the massive support of the United States and other countries funding it and supporting it. And yet, in many ways, Israel still sees itself as very small, as very fragile, as it doesn't trust in its military might in the region. And perhaps out of fear and out of trauma, is unleashing an attack on Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, and threatening to launch a full-blown war in Lebanon. And they're operating from that smaller worldview of fear and weakness, actual weakness. And I wonder what would happen if they were touring the land, if they were actually trying to Torah and bring Torah into the world instead of might and power. And last week, we read the Haftorah of Zechariah, and at the end of that Haftorah, it says, not by power and not by might, but my spirit alone. And right now we're not seeing that value, that belief system, that faith in the divine of spirit rising above all else. And so, and we didn't see it in this Parsha either, because when the spies return, as I said, they report back about the land is flowing with milk and honey, but the people are powerful, the cities are fortified, and the spies, except for Caleb and Joshua, express incredible fear. And Caleb tries to stand up and silences the people and assures them that they can ascend and conquer the land. Again, he's still operating from the same worldview of power over and domination. He's just saying, we can take the land, we can dominate, we'll win. But overall, the other spies win out, and the people are stuck in this narrow consciousness of fear, and they can only see either to be dominated or dominate. They can't see any other path. It's either one or the other, and we see that so much right now, and in Israel, Palestine, and in so many places in the world, where either one side wins and the other loses, or the other side wins and the first one loses. And there is the possibility of living in a world where all peoples can come together and build a world based on justice and peace. But to do that, we really need to deal with where we've been, the mistakes we've made, and make the reparations and repair needed. So because the people rise up and don't believe Caleb and Joshua, God gets all angry again. God again gets frustrated with the people and says he's going to wipe them all out. And Moses defends the people and says, and speaks directly to God's ego and says, well, what are the Egyptians going to think if you kill them all? You've taken them out of Egypt, you've done all these wonderful acts, and now the people are going to think, oh, God has no control, God's not so powerful. And Moses reflects back to the divine attributes of being slow to anger, abundant kindness, forgiveness of iniquity, and willful sin. And one who cleanses, but not completely, because the iniquity of the present, it says, will be carried upon the children to third and fourth generations. So I'm thinking about all the trauma of Israelis and Palestinians and the ways in which our traumas are being carried on generation after generation. And I fear it's going to be more than 3 or 4 generations for this healing to occur, the healing that's necessary to occur, because there's not even efforts made at this point, by and large, to heal and repair, to really listen to each other's narratives, to really take responsibility for the violence and for the slaughter. And so in the Torah Parsha, what happens? God says that everyone who's in the desert is going to be wiped out and not going to get to the land. And so instead of going to the land at that point, they're going to wander in the desert for 40 years and they'll all die except Caleb and Joshua. And the people are incredibly distraught about this. And I think that's what's happening. We're still wandering in the desert. We're still wandering in our Mo'adim Katnut, our narrow consciousness, our consciousness of a worldview of domination and power over and fear. And part of what we need to do is explore our inner landscape so that we can move from Mo'adim Katnut, this narrow, small consciousness, to Mo'adim Gadlut, a divinely inspired consciousness, both within and outside of ourselves, so that we can see the possibility of building a world based on love and justice, living in a different worldview, refusing to believe that the only way that we can be safe is by oppressing and killing other people. The only way we can be safe, the only way anyone can be safe, and the only way the planet can survive is if we embrace the fact that we are one and that our humanity and our safety and our security and our well-being and that of our children and our children's children depends on us seeing and treating the other with dignity and respect, and seeing their humanity and seeing their need for security as important and critical as our own. And when we access that place, then perhaps we'll be in Mo'adim Galut, and we will see a world that truly is Yaturu, toward with the Torah, the teachings of all spiritual traditions that say we can live in harmony, in love, in care, in generosity, as long as we acknowledge the past, make reparations, build a just world, and then we can have peace. So may this Shabbat be one that is filled with peace, with radical visions of transformation, and where you are able to, within your own self, experience your own Mo'adim Gadlut, your higher, godly inspired, divinely inspired consciousness. Shabbat Shalom.